Facebook family and friends, you know what it is. It's Saturday morning, Formers Anonymous. We're getting in this recovery time and making sure that we're all checking in on each other, healthy and well. We're going to bring in our co-host and the founder of our program, Sammy Rangel. Let's welcome him. What's up, my brother from another mother?
What's happening, my brother? Pinche huerco cabrón, how you doing?
I am old. That's how I'm doing, bro.
Tell me
It
about
has
it, man.
been a week of weeks, man. Sometimes I forget how lucky I am. Like
Why?
to have these little minor
How
setbacks
can
and
you
problems.
forget? How can you forget how lucky you are? Like, tell me about that. Walk me through that process.
Absolutely. So I think there's a part of everybody.
No. I just want to hear how you do it.
I think there's a part of everybody that falls victim to self pity at times, right? And whether it's a momentary lapse of reason like mine at times, or whether it's an extended stay at at your pity hotel, sometimes you feel like, damn man, can't shit just go fucking right? And so I fell victim to that thought process this week. It's been a rough week, man. Uh, but it was fleeting. You know what I'm saying? And it becomes less and less prominent as the years go by. Uh, I spend less and less time focused on shit, man. What can go wrong this week, right? But I think we all fall victim to that thought process at times, and it's just about fucking making sure you're checking on yourself and checking in with the people that matter, um, and reminding yourself of how lucky you are just to fucking be here, like just to fucking be here. I
Yeah,
could be in a cage right now, wishing I had these same problems. Right? But I remember sitting in a cage begging for these problems. Now I got them, and I'm like, shit, another bill coming due. Uh, how much do I owe my credit card company? You know,
you know what Samaya always asks me?
mm,
Did you ever see yourself doing this stuff? She
no,
always asks me that. And now as you're talking, I'm wondering why. Like, I'm wondering if she is like herself, like in awe of the life we live right now. Because she still finds it incredible, right? She's like, "Did you ever see yourself doing this? Did you ever see yourself having kids? Did you ever see yourself holding chick?" Like that's all she asks me. Like I need to dive into those conversations, and we do, but I it just hit me right now. Like that's a curious question, right? It's she's trying to understand me better, right? And but it takes you in the moment, and you have to come to terms with like where you're at in life, and you're like this is a pretty good life, man. You know? No, I didn't. No, I did not see myself sitting in Southwest Missouri holding chickens and ducks in my hands while
yeah,
I've got, I've got my daughter standing right next to me. No, I didn't see that. You know, it's a left turn in many ways, right? But
right, dude. When Julie sent me that snap of her holding the duck, and I was like, ooh, dinner. And she sent like the weird the little emoji with the scrunched up face, and then she had the turtle, and I was like, turtle soup. She was like, I hate you.
like,
Stop sending me pictures of food.
it's something else, man. You know, and I mean, this is gonna sound crazy, right? But this is how grateful I'm so open and raw right now out here. We took our ducks to our pond, which is quite a hike from where their coop is at. You know, it's probably a couple hundred yards, and so but the way we got them there, they followed us. They follow us
Mm-hmm.
like we're their parents, right? But they take the weirdest. They take the weirdest routes. You know, like almost the hardest routes. But because they're trying to hide, they walk through the little creek that leads up to the pond, right? And they're when they walk, they kind of walk like like their feet are wheels, like they have to kick them out to the side because they don't have knees, right? So
Right.
when they walk, they're walking like. Well, we got them to the pond and they played in the water for a while, and then we wanted to see if they were going to walk back with us. So we started walking back, and sure enough, they followed us back, and we got all the way to their coop, and they walked inside their coop. Like
That is so cool.
they went and dude, I got so emotional, and it was like, and it was a victory because it's like, okay, we're doing something right.
Right.
You know, like it's working. We're gonna be okay. Like we're doing it, you know, because this is a new set of skills, man. Neither one of us know shit about raising chickens and ducks. And
Livestock, bro.
they're
You
not
raising dinner.
they're not the same. They're waterfowl versus chickens, right? And they behave so differently, even though they're very similar. Like ducks have to dip their food in water.
Hmm.
I didn't know that. They have to. Like it's
Yep.
something they do. So they make a mess. You know, they make a mess. They're like toddlers. They just, you know, take a fistful of something, smash it in the milk, and you know, the milk goes everywhere. They make a mess. But you once you get to understand what they're doing, you know, it's just one of those things. So it reminds me of what you said, what Samaya says, and it's like we're having these new experiences that can seem difficult and they're stressful in and of themselves, right? I with you, you know, what did you start out with? Like that you forget how grateful you are, right?
Yeah. How lucky I am to have the problems I have.
Yeah, and I don't realize how stressed I get, right? Because I get stressed, but I hold my stress inside, you know, like I'm holding my breath, you know, and then it's like when you hold a pee, you know, and you don't realize how much stress you have when you got to pee until you pee, and then you realize like, wow, I was carrying a lot of stress holding that pee, you know. It's like this buildup, and it sneaks up on you. It's outside of your consciousness until something brings awareness to it, like those ducks walking back with us. I didn't realize how much stress and relief I would feel when they did it right, or when we did it right, you know.
Yeah.
So I agree, it's this unconscious, subconscious, preconscious thing where these things sneak up on us and into our lives, and because they creep, right? They creep. Looks like good morning, Amy.
Morning, Amy. Love you, hon. Morning, Aunt Chris.
Yeah, and stop whining. That was directed at you. That is for sure.
That had to be. Hold on.
Mm.
I'm trying to close these chat windows. I sent out a bunch of notices. Stop whining. That it had to be Amy, right? It had to be Amy that said that.
The original OG. Hey, so look at I'm getting arthritis. You want to tell you? I'm gonna tell you how gangster I am. This is how gangster I am. I still am. So I'm getting arthritis in this hand, right? Now watch this thumb. This thumb locks into place. Guess what that's called? You'll never guess. You'll never guess. You ready?
What's it called?
That's how gangster I am. Trigger finger. Boom! I still got it.
Yeah.
I still got it.
I'm done with you, bro.
Straight up. My doctor said, "Oh, that's trigger finger." I'm like, "Yes, all right, I'll take it."
Anything better than what I thought it was.
It's remnants from my old life, you know.
Right.
Because you got to grip that. You got to grip it. You got to have a firm grip on it. Anyway, I'm not talking about guns. All that time in prison.
So how's your week been?
My week, hot as F. Oh God! First of all, look, it snuck up on me. It snuck up on me because I get started around here pretty early. I get up, I'm outside, so I'm outside when it's still nice and cool. And so I was outside working from like early morning until like 3 p.m. We're leveling out the ground with a bona fide tractor. My neighbor's got a tractor, and so he's brought his bucket over. And so from where we start with level and going out 26 feet, there's a 17-inch difference in the grade, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is when you're moving dirt, right? So me and him started pretty early, 9-10 o'clock in the morning. We're out there. Next thing you know, we look up, it's 3 o'clock. We're like, and it not only is it 3 o'clock, it's 99 degrees out there. And we're drinking water. We got our little hats on, trying to protect our heads, but we're working. And I come inside the house when we decide to call it. I come inside the house, dude, and I felt the curtains closing. like the blackness was just coming over my eyes. It started at the top of my head, just started shutting down. And I was carrying something, and then I had to run. I knew I was going to pass out, so I had to run to where I was trying to get to so I could lay down.
Mm.
And I laid down on the floor. And then I didn't pass out, but I was damn near right there. If I wouldn't have laid down, I probably would have fell down. So learning how to deal with that heat. And so it is pretty hot out there, and it's pretty oppressive. So I've been spending some extra time in the shade or extra time in the house because it's just we got to wait to do things like at 6 in the evening or 6 in the morning because I realize it's not safe.
Yeah, and hydration is important when you're in that heat, right?
Well, there's only so much of that you can do. It's the heat. We probably shouldn't have been out there. Two old guys, as my neighbor says, two old fat guys.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have been out there in that heat, man. And I think we just avoided eye contact the next day because we know we were both like, let's not go back out there right now.
I don't want to do this again. Don't make me do this again.
So he's been coming over like at 6 in the evening. We just do what we can.
Oh yeah.
I had to go out and buy one of those. I don't know if you know what it is. I forgot what it's called, but it's an automatic leveling outdoor level that spins and
you laser level.
Yeah, and you use a stick with a radar meter thingy on it. So I had to go out and buy one of those because when we looked at it, we were like, yeah, no, that looks pretty level. And that's when we found out it was 17 inches off. That pole would have been like,
look level, but let's be honest here, it is not.
Yeah, I mean, so he had called one of his friends. He said, "Oh no, that ain't level," and he busted out his little stick, and he was like, "Yeah, you guys are way off."
Not a little bit off.
Now,
way off.
Interesting factoid: Missouri is also known as the Rock State. Now, how far do you dig posts in Wisconsin? Right, 32 inches.
32 to 36 inches. Yeah.
Out here, 18. You cannot get below 18 inches. It's nothing but rocks.
Damn.
It's terrible. When I fixed those mailbox posts and I put in the new 4x4s, I couldn't get lower than 18 inches. It was bad. And he's out here with a big ass tractor and a bucket, and his tractor is struggling to get down 17 inches.
Wow.
And it's a big tractor. It's a big Grand Deere. And that thing was just like, it was lifting up the front tires and making the back tire spin. He's just stuck, right? And yeah, it's pretty rough out there. So anyway, so my week's been pretty good, man. Samaya's doing good. We're doing all right, man.
That's good shit, man. I'm glad to hear it. So why don't we continue on in the same direction we've been going in for the last couple of weeks, and that way we offer a continuous. I don't know if you can hear Tater in the background. He's trying to break into my office.
I hear.
I was smart enough to get. Hold on. Smart enough to get a better lock.
You got to put that 2x4 across the door to
right
frame.
Let me make sure Lizzie gets them.
That's right, Amy. Siestas are needed. I slept the next day.
Siestas are needed for that heat. Hell yeah. Wait, we're talking about, God damn it, Tony. Tony Baloney. Hey, maybe for your life, I'll see you Friday night. Tony, as we all know, did you see Tony's post? I really liked his post. Tony's getting married on Saturday, and I'm doing the ceremony. I'm performing the nuptials for him and Jen. And
why does nuptials sound so dirty?
I don't know why it sounds so dirty.
It sounds like a porn word.
So
get them nuptials done.
He had made a point. So he invited as many people as he could for himself, right? But he made it so that his wife can invite her entire family, right? And for them, this is the last wedding her parents are going to see. You know what I mean? This is a huge thing for them. And so Tony sacrificed some of his friends and families going so that she could have what she wanted and her family needed for her wedding. And it was a pretty honorable sacrifice, right? And he let people know. Apparently, there were a bunch of people pissed off at him for it, like mad at him for deciding that his fiance's happiness was more important than his. Now, you know, Tony's got a big heart. He wants everybody to be there. He wishes he could invite everybody, but like the money isn't there to invite 1,000 people. I understand, because I'm coming up to the same situation here in September, right? I had to cut my list down substantially because we couldn't afford to have the wedding we wanted. In fact, not only did I have to cut it down, we have our wedding in 3 groups, right? There are people who will be at the entirety, the nuptials, the pictures, the dinner, or the nuptials, the dinner, and the reception. There are people who will be invited to the dinner and the reception. And there are going to be some people who are just invited to the reception, right? We had to make it down to where we could afford to do our wedding. And things are so hard this year because the housing market took such a big hit with new builds being down, that we're struggling to find the $5,000 it's going to cost me to do this. Like I'm having to scrap. I'm having to scrap to make sure we have enough to pay for that and get it covered. You know, it is what it is. But I just wanted to tell Tony I was really proud of you standing up the way you did and letting them know, hey, listen, if you don't understand and you can't support my decision, then you might not love me the way you think you do. You might not support me the way you think you do. You might be more concerned with you than you are me, right? Like that personal pride thing. And I just want to tell Tony that was an amazing thing that you did. I was super proud of you. I love you, bro. Well spoken, well said. And man, that is it's a hard thing to have to do. And I was proud of him for making that statement public on his page.
I mean, it's funny in life how people eliminate themselves from life, you know, from certain paths. Now, you know, a lot of people in recovery think like big fear, and I think a lot of us had that similar fear, was when you go into recovery, you think you're going to have to change your friends, give up all your friends, you know, lose all your friends, things like that, right? That's we're worried about that, right? But what we come to find out is that people, you don't, it's not that you lose them, it's that you choose a direction and there are people who choose to go with you or choose not to go with you. When I left, there was a shit ton of people that left. And to be honest, they wanted to follow me. And I was like, no, obviously it's something you do yourself. Like, we've gotten this far together. Now it's time to get further by ourselves. Like, you cannot follow me. I mean, you can go in the direction I'm going, but I'm not going to be looking over my shoulder for you. Like, I'm at my pace.
Yeah.
Right? People choose whether to follow you or not down a certain path, you know, and they eliminate themselves. And so you don't even have to thin the herd. The herd thins itself. You know, I don't know if you watched Yellowstone.
I watched a couple episodes with you down when we were there for
amazing.
I need to get it, but I just don't have it on my streaming.
You sure? Because it's on one of those common ones. But anyway, the concept was these people are going from like the Midwest all the way over to Oregon. People are just naturally falling off left and right. And maybe like a handful out of a group of 100 made it. Like, I feel like that's friendship. You're going over the frontier of life and changing. Not everyone's going to make it. I'll be honest with you. You already know me, Monte. If you do something like that where you dishonor or disrespect me or my family, I don't really. The only time I'm gonna try to work it out with you or talk to you is if I feel like it's worth it and can be, or I should. But once you show me who you are, I just move forward. And I'm not watering that plant no more.
Yeah.
You know, my uncle has told me a long time ago, man, you don't need to ever explain yourself to anyone because your enemies won't believe anything you have to say. They'll twist whatever you have to say. And your real friends don't need you to because they already understand you. They understand where you're coming from. So you get to a point where those people can basically, live their life without you because that's what they're choosing. So it's setting healthy boundaries and limits for yourself. You never have to explain that. That's the only thing I would say to that. But the fact that you did, Tony, is says something about you too. But at the same time, you don't have to. You don't have to, because when you are getting married, your priority becomes that woman. Speaking from a male's perspective, and that becomes your family. And so anything that threatens that, pushes that, stresses that, strains that, fucks with that, it's just naturally going to fall off, because I'm not going to have that in my life. I'm not. And birds of a feather flock together, and ducks don't fly with geese. You never see ducks and geese in the sky together, ever. But you do see flies on a pile of shit. So just avoid piles of shit. That's what I would say.
I'm right there with you.
Dragon,
it took me a long time to learn those rules of life.
Dragons are attracted to gold.
Yeah.
So fuck them.
And the horse they rode in on, like my mama used to say.
Here's the hard part of this, though. Sometimes it's your family. Sometimes it's people that are in your bloodline that will have to be filtered out, man. It's crazy, man. It's sometimes the people closest to you that you just, and it's sad, and I know it hurts, but you know what really brought this out was the pandemic. Because now, because of the pandemic, it erased a lot of the noise, and now you had to get down to issues. And then you start to realize, like, that's too much of a difference between me and you. I can't really be around that. I don't want to be around that. And so you can self-select too, so it is what it is, man.
All day. It was hard for me to understand that all my blood wasn't really my family. You know what I mean? Like, they were blood related to me. That didn't make them my family. They didn't have my best interest at heart. They didn't have my success at heart. And if they didn't have those things in their heart, then they're not my family. Like, I feel more of a family connection with you than I do a lot of my blood relatives, and that's something we need to recognize and understand and respect. Like, sometimes you're going to have blood that ain't your blood. Like, they're not your people.
And it's, I think what I'm learning over the last couple years, I knew when I left my old life that I was walking into a new life alone. But I also knew that there were going to be people I was going to meet along the way. I always felt like I could rebuild. How many times you've been transferred, right? I was transferred 17 times in 6 years. And what I learned to do was plant my roots quick. And sometimes from far away, right? Like, you realize that you will be uprooted. You will have to uproot things routinely throughout your life, and that's okay. That's called weeding, right? And repotting. There's a difference between weeding and repotting. Weeding, you pull the weeds and you throw them. Now we can feed them to our ducks. The repotting is when you're moving something to give it a better life somewhere else, in something else, with something else, right? We have to do that constantly. We have to do that constantly, man. And I'll be, my thought. Here's my unfiltered thought about Tony's video. You shouldn't be thinking about that right now. That was my unfiltered thought, because I felt bad for Tony that he had to pause his reflection about the biggest moment in his life with his wife. Being granted, this is his fourth, so he's used to this. But and this week should be, in my opinion, like ceremony. I'm only thinking about ceremony. I'm only thinking about my future, my life, and having to stop to tell others, what was going on. I felt bad for him. It's like, you shouldn't have to do that. And anyone who's making you do that, we should be taking a close look at later in life. When we're past all this. Like, you can't break people. Look, man, you want to hear something brutal? The weak would rather kill someone strong than let them be strong.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Like that's the brutal truth, man. You know, like they don't want you strong. Because your strength is a constant reminder
Of their weakness.
Of their weakness, right? Of everything. And it shouldn't be that way. It should inspire, but instead, remember when you're focused on your losses, somebody else's strength looks like your loss, which is a crab in a bucket mentality, right? Like, how messed up is that, man? How messed up is that, man? You know, but if we're going to have compassion and empathy rather than talk shit about these people, compassion and empathy tells me that there's nothing wrong with that with them. They're not trying to give you a hard time. They're having a hard time. But them having a hard time can be translated into giving you a hard time when they start sticking their foot out in front of you and making you wonder. Listen, Monte. Am I your best man in your wedding?
Yes.
No, I'm not.
You're my best man in life.
But did I ever give you any shit about that? Right?
No.
Because when you're friends with someone, you recognize, you understand where that person is coming from. And you have to assume, here's the lesson for Tony and the people who have done this to Tony. They should have been assuming good intentions.
Mm-hmm.
But look at the mindset. You have to assume good intentions versus assuming bad intentions over the same act. Tony didn't invite you to something. You didn't invite them to the whole thing or to the dinner or to the reception. And their reality is to come at you and say, you have bad intentions when you did that versus you must have good intentions when you did that. You know what I mean? And not everyone has good intentions, but if we're talking about a friend, a brother, a confidant, a support network, you should assume good intentions. What's up, baby girl? I'm glad you're here, Celine. Yes.
Hey, Celine, I love you.
Turn them headphones up right now.
Hang on.
Right? Assume good intentions.
Hey, Celine, I seen your snap last night, so I'm glad you made it here.
Look, I'm gonna have to unfriend her from all my.
I know, bro. Hey, I swear to God, I unfriended my daughter on Snapchat because I couldn't watch that shit no more.
I'm gonna do it today. Watch.
I thought the same thing. I'm like, man.
Look, when I'm on my Snapchat premium platinum page, I don't need to be crossing paths with my kiddo. I don't need that in my life. That's not right. No. Boundaries. I need some boundaries in my life. That 5-hour drive is not enough of a boundary right now.
She was making sure I wasn't fighting or getting shot. LOL.
You heard her last night on the phone.
You seen on Water Street there was a bunch of shootings last night.
I'm gonna be over. I was like, girl, calm down.
Right.
Calm down.
There was a bunch of shootings on Water Street last night.
Hey, there's a bunch of shootings everywhere. But guess where there weren't a bunch of shootings?
Here in my house.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I was getting shot down. That's just part of life. Hey, and Selena, you're like 30 minutes north of me, and I didn't even get a fucking call, Selena.
Oh. Assume good intentions, won't they?
I do. I hope you had a wonderful time, baby. I'm so happy you are safe. I was gonna reach out to you afterwards because I didn't see your snap until this morning, so I didn't know you were in Milwaukee. Don't be sorry, girl. Enjoy your life.
That movie where there was like Teens Gone Wild or something like that. What was that? You remember that show from a while back?
Yeah,
Girls Gone Wild or Miami Wild. I can't remember. I just had a flashback. Like I'm suffering as a father right now. I'm suffering. Right. My new to adult life daughter in my life. It's crazy, man.
You know what? She's one of the most well-prepared bad girls club. Of course she knew it. She's one of the most well-prepared young people I've ever met in my life. So she's going to still hit those struggles, but she's way more prepared for them than 99% of the children, the young adults her age that I've met. And I'm proud of her.
You're welcome, Salinas.
I don't know if it had anything to do with your upbringing or if it was just that she was smarter than the rest of the.
It was my stellar parenting throughout those years. Stellar. It was stellar.
I hope that my children are at least partially prepared for life
Yeah,
once they
nope.
hit it.
I don't see that. I don't see that coming. I've met your kids multiple times. Listen, Mateo was born with an inmate number.
Man,
He didn't have a social security number.
you know, I always think he's the gangster
And
until
why do I think
Danica.
Danica? Why do I when I watch Batman, I think of Danica as the Scarecrow. I don't know why, but she comes up as the Scarecrow.
Yes, yes, and she's smart, right? So I don't know if you've seen the Snapchat yesterday. I got the Jeep out, and the clutch is fine. I found out what happened. So the Jeep is working. So I stripped down the top. It was hot. I picked the girls up from school so I could take them for ice cream. You know, they were excited. I had Mateo in the back, and we're driving, and we're going down the road, and I'm like, "Are you guys having fun?" And they're all like, "Yeah," and they throw their hands in the air, you know. And Alana goes, "Fuck yeah!" And Danica goes, "Don't send that to my mom."
Oh my god!
I said, "Danica," I was like, "You didn't curse. Alana did." And Alana, being Alana, who's analytical as shit and logical, she goes, "Send it to her mom, Monty. It don't matter. I'm not going to California. She'll have to pay the swear jar, not me."
Oh,
I said, "I hate you children so bad. Let's go get ice cream." Like, they
so
are just gangster. Alana was like, "You're
clutch?
gonna have to pay for it, not me." I was like, "Man, that is so cold blooded. Like, screw it. Danica can pay for it. Send it to her."
What was wrong with the Jeep?
So I thought the clutch went. We talked about that.
What?
So it was acting as if the clutch went, and so I was going to take it in and have the clutch replaced or replace it myself. It's not a horrible job. But what I'm pretty sure what happened is it's a hydraulic clutch. I'm pretty sure I had air in the hydraulic line, which was causing it not to be able to shift while running. And so I had drained and bled that recently just to prepare for the clutch replacement, and it fixed the problem. And I got a strong clutch, so I'm happy with that save. It saves me a lot of money.
I didn't know
Cost me $3 instead of $300.
I didn't know you could drain a clutch line.
So it depends on what kind of clutch it is. Yeah, there's hydraulic clutches work with pressure that's used with your clutch in a hydraulic line, right?
How do you get air in there though?
Could have been a ton of ways. I could have had the cap off when I filled it, or whatever it was. It worked. So
that's cool.
But it's kind of like a brake line. How do you get air in a brake line? It happens.
I see. But what's weird is that it was working and then it went to not working.
Well, it went to not working when I hit that curb. When I hit that curve and the back tires skipped out from beneath me, it was raining, and the back end slid and jerked. And then all of a sudden I couldn't get it in. Almost like the transmission had just shifted slightly to the side.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so I see that happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I just parked it and left it because I don't want to spend all that time looking at it, and I had other vehicles to use, but it was getting warm and I wanted it on the road. Now I got to get that. I got to get that 300, man. I got to fix that. I got to fix the coolant system on it so I can get that on the road and moving. That's my baby.
What's interesting about what we're talking about this morning, clutches aside, and my trigger finger diagnosis. That's pretty gangster right there. I'm going to be like, yeah, but have you ever had a diagnosis of trigger finger? Right? Like, that's pretty solid. That's solid. I just felt like I leveled up with that, like post-traumatic stress from pulling the trigger finger.
Right.
All right. What are we talking about today? Now that we're 45 minutes into our show.
It was worth it.
It was worth it. And sometimes, man, you just got to get around the table and just talk, chat it up, man. It's okay not to be so serious all the time.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%.
Hey, did I tell you my neighbor gave me another four-wheeler? Gave it to me.
What?
Gave me a four-wheeler. He couldn't get it started. I got it started.
What was wrong?
Needed a new battery. And I happened, remember my bike that I just junked for like $30? I had the battery from that was brand new, and I put it in there and it started. But it's got a pretty bad gas leak at the carburetor and the fuel line, I think.
Yep.
So I took it in. You know, for them to do a tune-up on my four-wheelers, it's $130 here.
Well, so, not bad at all.
Not bad at all. So I've got some brakes on the blue one. I got brakes put in on the blue one. So it's got rear brakes, no front brakes though.
Okay.
The red one's running, and now I got another 4 tracks. This one's only a 250, and it's only a 2-wheel drive, but it's a big bike. It's a good bike. So
nice. I'll have fun with it when I come down.
Yeah. Now we got 3. I'll probably have to let you ride the bigger one, the 4-wheel drive.
I mean, I've never ridden a 4-wheeler at all, so I'll ride whatever.
They're pretty. There's no clutch, and instead of 1 down, like 4 up or 5 up, it's only up. And then the only reason you would go down is to downshift or to go into reverse.
Okay.
So it's pretty straightforward. And I got a blue one that is like it's an automatic transmission. So you use your thumb instead of your foot. You just go up or down on the. So yeah, they're not hard to ride at all. So Maya and Julie are both now. They're pretty good at them now. And you know, it was funny because the other day I was using my zero turn and the ground's so wet I got bogged down in like some mud I didn't see, and so I called somebody to jump on the 4-wheeler and come pull me out. And dude, she played like she was a tow company and like an old man tow truck driver, and she was like, okay, I'm gonna need you to stand back. This is a professional's job. There's some danger here, which is why I'm doing it and why I charge what I charge. Like, dude, she had this whole persona going of this old country.
She's such a gangster, bro.
Pulled me out and then took off like it was nothing, man. I'm so proud of her, dude. She knows how to do so much stuff around here. I've been teaching her how to use my cutting torch.
Nice.
We heated up that like a big ball off of a hitch to get it loose, and you know, like she's out here doing it with me, man.
You know,
she don't care about getting dirty or nothing. She'll come right out, like, hey, come help me outside. She'll go put on her boots and we'll kill it. We'll kill it together.
Yeah, honestly though, man, both the girls, they're intelligent. They're funny. They're good kids, man.
I'll tell you what they are most of all. In my eyes, they're kind. They're kind. And you know who's a good listener? They're both good listeners, but Selena is a really good listener. She embodies good listening. And so does Samaya. Like when you're talking to her, like she listens, but Selena's being an adult, she is an excellent listener, man. When you talk to her, you feel like she's really engaged and like
she cares about what you're saying. She cares about your feelings. Yeah, no.
She has good feedback, good insight. Like it's crazy. Both of my kids do, man. It's crazy because like I'll talk to them and they'll say things I hadn't thought about. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm not going to tell you that I think that's a good idea because I don't want you to think I didn't think of it first. But thank you.
It's so amazing how kind, considerate, and thoughtful they are, considering the asshole of a father they have. You know what I mean?
And uncle. Like, it's terrible.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
I remember the first time I met them. First off, Samaya was in my pocket. Like, I had just met this kid. She was like 6 years old. She was like, you got any money? What?
I like them shoes, Holmes.
Right. She was just gangster. And then Selena's, she was like, do you want to do makeup? And I'm like, no, but okay. I guess we're doing makeup today. And then she did like all my arm, remember? Sitting in your back. She did my whole arm. She's like, cool, I like you. And then left. And I was like, God.
I will adopt you.
Right. What did I get myself into? Why did I think being friendly to strangers was a smart idea? I knew better. But man, yeah.
That's good.
I've been so proud watching them grow, and then like having the both Salinas and Samaya like treating me as if I was a part of them. You know, their circle, their family. Like they've never treated me as anything more less than their deal, with respect and kindness. And you're right, they're great kids. You've done a good job, bro.
You know, I raised them around my extended family. You know, and Salinas and both Samaya have been in sweat with me since they were both 2 weeks old. So they've been raised around that whole family, that whole side of life, um, which I think is really, really, a credit to the way we all carry ourselves. But they also, after the divorce, they watched how the various different people reacted, how some people just stuck by our sides, how some people just disappeared, how some people picked a side, how some people wouldn't pick a side, which not that they needed to, but there was some really bad shit happening and they wouldn't even say anything. So it's like pretending like they weren't observing what was happening.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that gave them a lot of unique perspectives and it helped them figure out like how to look and evaluate for themselves, like what a good friendship was, what a good support system was, and coming to terms where people come and go. Because that, my boss, my mentor, and this is a big issue in recovery. My boss said, when this is when I was just getting started in the field. He was like, when do you start preparing someone for discharge throughout the process of their counseling time with you? And I said, probably around, probably like when you only got about 3/4 of the time left with them. He says, no, from the beginning. He's like, because many of your clients don't know how to transition. He's like, people who don't know how to transition, like really struggle with that. And so transitioning, changes, right? What do we do most of our life? We try to avoid big changes for our kids. Well, if we avoid all those big changes for our kids, how do they learn how to cope with big changes? Right. And so this is when I think you move from protecting your kids to preparing your kids for the world, right? And so you have to teach them how things change, how transitions occur, people come and go. People are sometimes like a season in your life versus, the whole year in your life, so to speak. So it's I think because I've pulled as much as I can out of this divorce, I think my kids have too. Like I struggled at first because it was a shock, a blow. It was new territory. But once I got my head out of my ass, man, I just started looking for and this is what we're going to talk about, right? I started looking for the lessons in that process rather than the losses in that process. So maybe we should transition so we can talk a little about that before we wrap up today, which is focusing. Are we really driven by our losses or are we driven by our lessons, right? um and let's talk about this for a second, Monte. What determines the loss?
Well, I mean, I guess that would be a loss would be determined by each person's personal perspective, right? Like something that might be a loss to you or me might not be a loss to Amy, right? Something that might be a loss to Amy might not be a loss to me. I think that whether I'm winning or losing a situation in my mind, as long as I come away with it with something more than I started with, right? A better understanding of my surroundings or the person that I was dealing with. Like if it was a deal between me and another person and I feel like I'm getting burned or I'm losing out on something, did I come away with something from that? So now I learned who this person is. I learned what their loyalty is. That the recent situation with the mutual friend, right? That person's wife reached out to me and apologized and made try to make nice and said, hey, listen, you know what's the worst thing of all is how much you did for us, and it ended this way. I took that as a gain. I took that as a win. Didn't respond with anything more than I don't think I should talk to you. Thank you. Goodbye. Right? That was my response to them, to both of them. But I took it as a win. right? I took it as it made me feel better inside to hear that person admit that there was, you know, an offense made to me. But I didn't need to go any farther than that. I'll take that win and we'll call it a day, right? Other people might still be focused on the fact that all the damage that was done to the friendship, to the life, to the physical stuff. So I think a loss depends on who you are and what you see it as.
So what I think we summarize that as it's a mindset, right? So I kind of think that the word loss, it depends on your, like what you said. I think you said it best when you said is your perspective. So if you lose $500, that's your last $500. If all you see that is a loss, what's your day going to be like?
Horrible,
right? But if it's like a momentary, and I think we'll all feel the brunt edge of a loss, the initially, like what initially feels like a loss. But there's this parable out there that says this guy buys a new house, right? Or he inherits a new house. And his neighbor comes up to him and says, "Oh, you're so blessed, you're so lucky." And the guy says, "Maybe." And then some time goes by, and then he has a child. And the neighbors come by and say, "Oh, you're so blessed, you're so lucky." He says, "Maybe." And then a few years down the road, one of their horses dies, and the neighbor says, "Oh, that's so unlucky. That's so terrible." And the guy says, "Maybe." And then years down the road, one of his children breaks an arm. They say, "Oh, that's so terrible. You're so unlucky." The guy says, "Maybe." And it goes on and on like this over this entire life of this person, right? And they wanted to understand, like, why doesn't he ever say yes it is or no it isn't? And the guy was like, because you don't know what the situation is going to be like, so you have to stand back and you have to wait for it to reveal itself. And I think while some people have reactions to things that are happening in their lives, what if we were to wait to see what was inside of that, what was truly meant inside of that, right? When I broke my knee, my uncle said that's when you have a knee injury, that's normally an issue of humility. I wasn't even thinking about humility. I was thinking about my knee. And here he is introducing that. What is it around your humility that you need to be paying attention to, right? He saw something else in it than I saw, right? And then it just made me really reflect on that, and what happened is that bad memory, that bad experience started to be something more like, oh, what is in there? Now I'm looking underneath there to see if there's something deeper, something of more value, right? And so if you're driven by your losses, then your life will feel pretty miserable, right? Hey, Jane, good morning.
Morning, Jane.
Amy said, I took the win and then severed the connection. That's right, Amy. We talked about that last week. We're going to talk a little bit more about that this week right now before we wrap up. So the first, in step one, what drove you to the table? That's what step one is about. What is driving you to the table? And typically you could house it under losses, such as trauma, abuse, addiction, drugs, alcohol, sex, relationships, money, whatever it may be. What brought you to the table? But what is FA concerned about? What you bring to the table. Now, whatever drove you there if that's all that got you to the table and that's all it ever was, you probably never make it past step one. You probably never would make it past step one. You'd only be coming to the meeting to talk about what is ailing you, what is haunting you. Now, think about what the word haunted means in a sense, right? Haunted means this has been going on for a while. There's something old and decrepit about what we're facing, right? It's a ghost, right? Like when you think of a ghost, no one thinks of a ghost like, oh, this ghost was just born today. We don't think about ghosts. We think of ghosts as being something that's really old and been lingering, right? Yeah, that's right, Jane. That's right.
Yeah.
And what's haunting you? What if it wasn't? What if it wasn't really haunting you? What if you were scared of what it had to say to you, but that didn't mean that the intentions of what you were facing were meant to scare you, right? Yeah. Do you walk around the house scaring Lizzie by accident all the time? I know I do
Not
that.
by accident, on purpose though.
No, when I do it on purpose too, but I meant on accident. Like Julie is so like skittish that I if she didn't hear me coming from 8 miles away, I scare her, even if she heard me from 5.
Right.
And so it's like, that wasn't my intention, and what if the things that happened didn't necessarily have to have an intention behind it, but just were, if a meteor strikes the earth, did it have a bad intention, or was that just what it is, just what was going to happen, right? And so how we're driven by our losses, that creates a number of problems. Now, because we're driven by our losses, right? And what do I mean driven? That's what preoccupies your mind. That's what's constantly on your mind, right? And that one week we're on here, we saw comment after comment about the sadness, the grief, the dilemma, the unsolvable, issue or problem. That's what people focus on, right? So, like in Jane's comments, she says, "What's underneath the sadness?" That's what we're talking about, as opposed to people who only want to talk about the sadness, who are only focused on the sadness, right? And getting them to shift their focus from the sadness to what's underneath the sadness can be a big lift. That's a monumental concern that we have. Like we're trying to get people to see what else is associated with this memory other than the memory. Is it a memory for the sake of a memory? Or is it a memory for the sake of damaging you? Or is it a memory for the sake of, wisdom, knowledge, insight, And what if the memory is really not the issue, but the way we perceive the memory, right? Which is why in my TED Talk, I talk about what held us down will one day hold us up. That's right. I think the sadness versus my sadness can be a big difference too, right? There's this sadness I feel about, or I feel when I think of, right? Because we don't need to become the ailment. We don't need to. Remember, that's where I talk about devotion to our suffering in the literature. This devotion, like we're spending time at the altar of suffering, right? I did this in the joint when I was in the hole in 17 and just survived that race riot. You know what I did one thing? Maybe you did something like this too. I took every bad memory, and I remember writing it on a yellow piece of paper like this, but it was a small pad, right? And I took every bad memory I had, and I wrote it as small as I could on this pad of paper. And I had like 3 or 4 pieces of paper with all these bad memories, and I put it on the cinder block wall, like right across, like page right here next to each other. And you know what I did? And I was in the hole 28 months at this time. I did 2 things. I would punch the wall while I was reading that. Like I would like drill, like I was hitting a bag. But at first I started because my knuckles weren't real hard at that time. I was like just hitting the wall. And eventually I could almost hit that wall full force. Boom, boom, boom. Like building up my tolerance for this anger and this hatred of what each one of these little items on this paper, did to me. And I was trying to convert it into something that it could do for me, which was to make me hateful and violent and angry. And then because I was not that strong, I started doing a push-up for each thing I wrote. Right. So every day I read my list, do a push-up. And then the next day I do 2 push-ups for each one. Believe this or not, I was doing 10,000 push-ups a day before I got out of the hole at the end of that 28 months. Like I concentrated so much and converted all of that negative energy into, but it didn't do me good, because what it did, I was condensing myself, right? I was contracting. But what if I took that same energy, which is what I think we're doing through recovery, and now we're focused on all that terrible shit. And instead of hardening ourselves, we're softening ourselves. We're becoming vulnerable. We're starting to open up. Now we're starting to think about things differently, even though we're thinking about the same things. What's on that paper that I wrote in that prison is what we talk about every time we jump on one of these shows. It's the exact same stuff. It's no different, man. The abuse, the neglect, but instead of being dedicated and focused on the losses, driven by the losses, we're looking at those things and trying to find what are the lessons built in there. So now I'm driven by the lessons. Are we thinking any less about our past today than we were back then? Absolutely not. But it doesn't hold the same value or meaning that it did back then.
Sammy?
Yes.
I have to go. I'm going to leave you on here.
Okay.
You should be able to end the broadcast when you're done. Do you have a button that says end broadcast?
I do not. It says leave studio.
Yeah, no. So they're here for a major pickup, and they were supposed to be here at noon, but I just seen them. I heard them pulled up and parked in front of our house.
Ask them if they.
Yeah, they're here.
Can they give you 20 minutes?
No.
No.
But I'm going to leave you on. I'm going to close my camera, and I'll come back.
Okay.
All right, bro.
So,
how do you like my picture?
Yeah, that looks great. It looks like when you got out the joint. Yes, letting love in. That's what I got to do. Let me love me. I'm so used to hating me. Those were the stages we are in until we get to a point where we're willing and able and guided and supported and combing through it differently, looking for something different, right? We have to be driven by our gains, and the gains come from insight. It comes from our ability to learn from, to improve from. If all you see is wreckage, then all you'll have is a mess. But if you can see material that you can pull from the wreckage, then that becomes your message, right? It's a big difference between your mess and your message. The other thing that we need to think about is, so if we're trying to convert this idea of being driven by our losses and being driven versus being driven by our gains, we have to come to terms with one important fact. And this is a bitter pill until you recognize the value that it holds for you. There is no remedy for your losses. There's no remedy for it. There's nothing that can make it better. There's no one and nothing. Amy, earlier you were talking about, what you do with people when you sever the connection, right? A lot of times, like we talked about last week, we want the people who hurt us to be a part of the repair. The other part of that is that we also want those same people to listen to us. Think about that. The people you're having conversations with in your head are not even listening to you. They're not listening to you, but yet you conversate with them in your head so much through those memories. And we're waiting for them to listen to us, right? We want them to hear what we have to say. More importantly, we want them to care about what we have to say. We want them to acknowledge and validate what we have to say. We have to stop talking to the people who aren't even listening to you. It's just going into thin air. These people are living rent-free in this space up here, and you're conversating with them even though they're not listening. They have no interest in listening to you. Things always happen twice, man, and this is what you got to remember. The first time it happens, it's when it's in the world, when things happen right in front of you. The second time it happens is when you bring it into your brain and then you start to create a value or a meaning for it. Let me repeat that. Things happen twice. The first time it happens is when it happens in front of you. A vase falls off the table. That happens. That's the first time it happened. The second time it happens is when you process, what does that mean to me now? Right? And it's either the worst thing, it's either the best thing, or it doesn't mean anything, or anywhere in between any of that, right? It can have all these different meanings. There's this parable I use when I'm teaching counseling, and it's about personalities, and it's like two twins who are essentially raised together, have a very similar upbringing, similar parent, or same parents, same household, treated roughly the same, more or less. They go to a beach, say they're around 6 years old. They go to a beach. And the first time at the beach, and they're standing there they see the waves coming in. They go stand where the waves are going to come in, and they're waiting for the wave. They're really excited. And the wave comes in, and it's a big one, and it knocks both the kids down. The wave goes back out. Both kids stand up. One kid runs back crying to his mother, completely destroyed and fearful. And the other one is jumping up and down with excitement, waiting for the next wave to come back. What is the difference here? I think Montes started this off with perspective. One could be said to be representing being focused on your losses. The other one could be saying being just, focused on your gains or your experience, or your positive experience there. But if we can accept that there is no remedy for our losses, when these things happen, when these things happen, it's up to us to remember at some point in the process, after we're done reacting, that it's up to us to decide what it means to us. So Jane said that can be scary, especially in life and death situations. Well, it's no scarier than what you're already living with. You're already scared. We're already scared, which is why we're suffering, because we don't face the fear. I say it's scarier to not face the fear than it is to face it, because uncertainty, right? Uncertainty is really worse than death itself. Facing the unknown can be scary, but typically what happens when we face the unknown in something is that we end up discovering something. And that discovery is typically, worth it. But remember, and so when we say things, yes, it's hard, yes, it's scary, remember to finish the sentence, but it's necessary. We have to finish the sentence with, but it's necessary. So that can be scary, especially in life-death situations, to go back in the situation, but it's necessary. So you have to finish the story. When you only tell the story that way, that's the end. Yeah, it's scary. Avoid it. Stay away from it. But when you add, but it's necessary, you already know what your next step has to be, as opposed to not knowing what you can do about it and just having to live with it. Right? Again, you can't just talk about the problem, because that means you're being driven by a loss. You have to talk about the next step, where you want to be, so that you can be driven by a gain or a lesson here. Right? If we're already afraid, choose how to be afraid. Right? It is scary. It's scary to live with the memory, just as it is to revisit the memory on purpose versus just as a natural course of the way we live, right? Through PTSD. There's a difference between experiencing something through PTSD and experiencing something through good work that you're putting into yourself, like through recovery program, through counseling, mentoring, things like that, right? But you're not free of the thing that's scary. You're just changing the way you approach what's scary. And, I know what's going to happen if you never face it, but I can't tell you what would happen if you do. I can just say that you've just improved your chances on doing something better with it. And I think anytime you put good intentions into what you're going to do next with yourself, for yourself, yeah, there's going to be some hardship associated with that, but the lessons that you get from that are going to be so worth it. Now, remember, there's no remedy for our losses. Let's dive into that a little bit before we wrap up here. What does that mean? Being no remedy for our losses means there's nothing that anyone or anything can do that would go back and change what happened, resolve what happened, breathe life back into that exact moment. There's nothing. There's no remedy for that. The only remedy I can think of is to change it from a loss to a lesson. And those lessons will continue to, out of one experience, that's right, Amy, out of one experience can come many lessons or many fears. I mean, and the fear is a lie. If the experience didn't kill you, the fears that you created out of that experience aren't going to kill you. Remember, last week we talked about people who tried to destroy us were thinking they need to be a part of the repair. No, they're not a part of that repair. They're not a part of it. They shouldn't be. It's counterintuitive. It's not healthy. It's not safe to think of them being a part of it. They can do their part, but they shouldn't be a part of it. Then their part could be, apologizing, admitting, whatever. But that is just one tiny piece. That the whole piece should not be built on what they're going to do. The whole piece has to be built on what you're going to do. A part of the remedy is putting down that bag of receipts, right? Like there is nothing that anyone or anything can give you. There's no magic wand. And I've talked about this so many times, but here's the kicker. In your mind, over the years, you have played out this scenario that says, this is what I need to happen in order for me to be better. And let's say what you imagined was like the person who did you wrong came into your life and apologized and admitted and gave you the perfect apology, right? It went down the perfect way, the way you imagined it. However you imagine, he or she did that perfectly. Here's the problem. Here's what's going to happen. It's not going to be as fulfilling. It's not going to be as fulfilling for you as you thought it would be. Here's why. You said, in my mind, this is what has to happen in order to fill this void. If it goes this way, it will fill my cup. It will fill me up. It's magic. It'll fill me up, right? And when they do it, when they finally come to you and they do it the way you imagined, and you got your cup there waiting for it to overflow with everything you thought was going to happen, and you realize it barely even made a dent in your cup. Now you have that great disappointment, right? Now you have this empty cup filled with what you thought you needed, only to realize it didn't do it for you. It's like when you have an expectation of your first time with somebody and then it's just not what you expected, right? Disappointing. Why is it disappointing? Why isn't it everything? Maybe it made it better, but not as good as it needs to be. And I can promise you that. Why? Because until you recognize that the remedy has to come from within, the only thing you can fill that void with is your own love, compassion, and empathy for yourself, right? Your own healing, bringing the healing into the jazz hands, right? You bring the healing into your own life. That is the only thing. And that healing can be done with a select few, but not what we would call your protagonist, your antagonist, the person who you have the issue with. We can't put it on that. We can't put it on them or in their care or in their hands. I just wouldn't do that. But it can be done with a counselor, your supporter, your sponsor, with your confidant, with a select few. And here's why. This healing has to be done in anonymity. That labor has to be done in anonymity. And that means very privately between you and your true established network. And it doesn't have to be many. It could be a couple. It could be one. But I would never do this alone. We need that outside perspective. But I say the more sources you have to help you down this process, the better. We don't have a remedy. We have to, step one is about acceptance, accepting that something is unmanageable, that you've lost control. And in a lot of ways, we have to accept that what's been done has been done. And now we need to move on to healing, to experiencing some sort of repair, right? And we have to be open to that repair. So things I want you to take away from this: labor and anonymity. Be driven by your gains, not your losses. Accept that there's no remedy for those losses other than what you can do for yourself. other than what you can do for yourself with a select few. So in that anonymity piece doesn't mean alone, it means in private, behind closed doors, with those people that you trust. Um, we need to stop talking to people who aren't listening to us and start talking to people who truly do know how to listen. We don't want those people to hear us. We need to be heard by people who are part of the actual repair process. So we have to shift a lot of our focuses, a lot of what we're trying to do, right? If you want to make a difference in your own life, this is the path forward, if you ask me. Well, family and friends, we're going to sign off. It's been amazing. Amy, Jane, Tony, everybody who's been here, you know, we care about you and we want the best for you. And thank you for your contributions here, because they do drive our ability to connect with, a larger audience. I think it's especially important to share these streams that we put up. You have to share them, and you've got to encourage other people to share them, because if you're suffering or have suffered through any of this, you know how many people have too. And so we do this every morning, not just for our own sake, but for the sake of others. And step 12 says, we have to send the message. We have to pass the message along. Please pass this message along, and do what you can, to live in your lessons, not your past. Much love, everyone.